My man, what's up?
Hello, Jared. How are you doing, brother?
I'm great. Great to see you, Daniel.
Great to see you too. It's my pleasure, as always, man. Thanks for taking the time. It's really insightful to get to talk to you and and know that you're doing good.
I am. Yeah, it's been an interesting winter, going through different sicknesses and stuff like that, and navigating how my body responds to that post HLH. But we're on the upswing, and now just getting back into the swing of training, and it's always good to get back onto the bar.
Yeah, man. I have to tell you, I've told you through DMs, but the content you put out, it's really helpful in, let's say, not as mo fitness motivation, but as a reality check. I would call it a reality
Mm.
check. The last one that you posted, that we are not broken, we are not this, I don't know, these narratives that we create in our heads. I think it's super helpful to view these things that way because you can enjoy life, not just training life a lot more.
I really appreciate you saying that, man, because it's always my hope that as I put out these different things, it resonates, and I have particular people in mind that I write the content for, and they're the people who I've worked with the most and who I love working with the most. It's also like a reflection of me and where I've been, where I currently am. And I agree. Like I'm really glad that it can feel like a reality check, hopefully in a challenging way for some of the, as you say, the narratives that we tell ourselves, the excuses or the beliefs that we may have, which may not be accurate around injury, around training, around whatever limitations, but then also hopefully like understanding of if anybody reads that and feels like, oh shit, that's me. Good. I hope that's the case. And then, you know, hopefully pairing that with information and strategies to move forward because we've all got a limited amount of time to be on this earth. So I think we may as well do some cool shit while we're at it.
It's cool as shit, man. I have to tell you. And yeah, for real, the topic of pain, the topic of injury, I find it quite fascinating because, well, it's kind of a pilgrimage when you take a trip, an unplanned trip to Snap City. I've been there a couple times myself. And it can be quite tragic in one's head when you don't have any notions about the different models of pain, about how to deal with injury, and when you face, let's say, some professionals that are stuck in the dualistic model, as you say, you have pain because you're injured, your structure is
Mhm.
damaged,
Yeah.
and that's it. You have to either not train because you're gonna fuck yourself up a lot more, or maybe you have to go through surgery, all these types of things. And I've been there, man. And that's why I started as I could to try to understand these things, try to educate myself, because being in that position can be the most frustrating thing. Let's say you love going to the gym, right?
Yep.
Then you injure yourself, then you go to the doctor, the whatever it is, the physical therapist, whatever it is.
Mhm.
Each one of them, you won't let me lie, probably will give you a different diagnosis, and then you're stuck in this position of what do I do? I have this pain, I cannot train. These people tell me that I I can't train, but I want to
Yeah.
train, and if I don't train, the pain grows bigger, and it starts going. You go crazy with those things, man. So I think a good starting point is about your own education, because I know you're a physical therapist, and I'm really curious. How was your education in the sense of what did they taught you? Did they mention all these models, or people assume that it's this dualistic model?
Yeah, it's a really good question, and I'll get right into that. But first, I have to agree with you so much on everything you just said, because yeah, I've taken many unplanned trips to Snap City. I fucking hate it there. But the thing is, like, based on research to an extent, but also just experiences, if you train long enough and hard enough, hopefully you avoid injury. But the reality is, some sort of injury, if we define that as an ache, pain, or something that interferes with training or takes away training time, your chances go up just because you roll the dice more often. And to be clear, you can do everything right. You can train reasonably, you can have really good technique, you can try to recover as best you can, and still sometimes stuff happens. We can reduce our risk of it, which we obviously should. But the point is, if you find yourself in a situation where you're injured, you're in pain, you can't train how you want to, it is so frustrating because you're right. You get all these different messages from people online, people in your life, your mom, your dad, your brother, your buddy from high school used to bench 315 allegedly, and like, oh, you shouldn't do that. You should definitely do this. And Squat University says this. And what do? You just want to get jacked. You want to be swole, lift some heavy circles. Like, it's a really tough position to be in. So my hope is that as we go through this live, for anybody who has been there or is there right now, don't worry, we're going to give you some tangible, practical tips and point you towards some resources that'll help you out that way. As far as my education, I have to be fair with how I present this, because with physical therapy school, their job really is to, in a large sense, to make sure that you pass the licensing exam. And I had a really good program. I went to a good school, grateful for it, had really good professors by and large. And the information that we got, especially around pain, it was largely rooted in the biomedical model, more causative and pathological, looking at, okay, these are your movement faults. These are the restrictions that you have in your joints and in your movements. This is causative of your pain. And it was fascinating for me at the time because I wanted to be this manual therapist and get out of school and use my hands to fix people and be this like wizard of bodies. So I was eating that stuff up. And after school, after passing the exam, which I did thankfully, obviously because we're here, and then starting to learn more about how it's really not that simple as far as our understanding of pain. We do not have pain figured out. We know a lot about pain. We know a lot about injury in the body, but there's a lot that we don't know. And then that led to this big phase of me questioning, well, like, fuck, what if I thought that I had it all figured out and I don't, what can I even do? What's the point of physio? What can we even do to help people? It was this nihilistic dip or nihilistic phase, which, as I found, a lot of new grads go through as they start to understand biopsychosocial models of pain and other things like that. And it's uncomfortable to go through because, again, if you're a physio or a clinician or a coach, you're trying to help people. If you're the athlete in pain, you're trying to figure out what the hell you got to do to get out of pain. So it usually leads to more questions than answers at first. I got more to say, but any thoughts or comments on this first?
Quite a bit. I actually put a pin on Squad University. I mean, I agree. We have to be charitable. I have to be charitable with my own education, with the people that try to help me when I got to Snap City. It's funny, man. Some people go to Dubai, some people go to Paris. I go to Snap City, apparently. Uh, it I know some people really do try to help,
Mm-hmm.
but with this type of content, in the instance of Squad University per se, man, it makes you feel like you're doing something inherently wrong, and that's why you're hurt. And some people in the gym, perhaps, or the medical doctor, or whoever it is, tells you that you actually did something wrong by lifting too heavy or whatever it is. That in my case, at least, when I went to the gym after visiting Snap City, I felt wrong. Like I shouldn't be doing this. I should be listening to these people, not going to the gym. And this feeling of guilt, which is really weird to describe,
Yeah,
it kind of also in the biopsychosocial model also adds up to the pain, and it's really hard to get out of there.
yeah.
And yeah, a lot of thoughts, man, but I think it's a really good starting point because in the sense of education, that's a good starting point. Let's say the model of the traditional model of pain bottom up.
Mhm.
You put your hand to the fire, your brain says out, take your hand out. Well, what happens when there's no injury, there's no apparent alarm, there's nothing, but it hurts and it hurts like
Yes.
hell. And that's why it gets really messy, man. So I leave it up to you.
It's a really excellent, actually, next phase here because I'm going to pull from what I actually presented on in this past November when I went with Clinical Athlete to teach a course, the Clinical Athlete Powerlifting Certification. I had a section in there specifically on pain science, and there were a few key things that were important I felt for everybody there and everybody listening here to understand, whether you're a coach, clinician, or the athlete. One of the things is that pain always comes with a story. It doesn't matter if it's a new pain or an old pain. Sometimes you're coming in and this is a brand new chapter that's being written because your back started hurting on your deadlifts or your squats last week and you're trying to figure out, am I okay? Can I keep training? What do I got to do? And it's this new territory that you're exploring. Other times it's your back that's been hurting for 10 years and there's lots and lots of source material. Like the chapter is very long. And are there pure, quote unquote, pure physical or physiological components to the pain experience? Certainly. As humans, we can get down a philosophical rabbit hole if we want, but we've got a physical component that is innately intertwined with our mental and emotional components too. So you put your hand to the fire, you do a rep that goes wrong, you hear something pop or something, and then you get pain. Sure, there are these physical components of load, volume, range of motion, other health or physical elements that may factor in here for sure. Then the other thing is, or things are, how attentive and alert are we? How on edge are we? If you've hurt your back before on deadlifts, naturally the next time you go to deadlift or some of the next times, you're going to be on high alert. Like, oh, is that rep going to hurt? Okay, that one didn't hurt. What about the next one? And what about the next one? And this hypervigilance is the term, is correlated with a higher likelihood of experiencing pain. And if you're hearing me say that, you're like, what the fuck, man? It's only natural for me to like watch out for the pain. And you would be correct because pain, the purpose of pain by its nature is negative. It's unpleasant. It's meant to serve as an alarm system. It's meant to tell you something happened that might actually be dangerous that we probably want to avoid in the future. So if that happens, you're probably watching out for more of those negative things to avoid it. And yet we do find in the research and in practice that the more hypervigilant you are, the more of the belief that you have that doing these exercises or these tasks are inherently dangerous or could be damaging to you or they're bad to do, the higher of a likelihood is that it becomes essentially like a self-fulfilling prophecy, which again leaves us in this place where it's really difficult to know, okay, I'm here now, what do I do? And I promise there are things that you can do, which we will keep getting into, but it's important that we kind of set the stage first. I mean, have you experienced that in any of your trips to Snap City or seeing other people getting there?
Oh, for real, man. I experienced it a couple times. Still it bothers me some, but I think I learned a lot from your content, from studying all these topics, from getting into conversations like this. That, well, let me tell you an anecdote. A couple weeks ago, it wasn't my left leg, which usually gives me a little bit of pain. It was actually my back. My back usually goes well with training.
Mhm.
But I kind of fucked it up doing actually deadlifts. But this time it was really different the way I framed it in my mind
Mhm.
because I took it with a sense of humor. Like it was the dumbest way, man. I just put the barbell in the floor and then boom, something snapped. I completed the rev, you
Yeah,
know?
yeah.
So I sat down. I went like, okay, kind of hurt. Oh no, no, it hurts, it hurts. I kept going with the session. I tried to do, I think it was leg press afterwards. I couldn't. But the day after, I couldn't really get out of the bed. I was like, I couldn't even move.
Mm.
But this time, I didn't think instantly, oh my God, why me? Why you hate me so much?
Mm.
Well, all these instances that I've been there
Yeah.
before. It was more like, "Ah, this is kind of funny. Well, let me see what I can do today and get the best out of it."
Yes.
That's what I did. I tried to do some deadlifts with my own body weight, try to do some squats, try to walk a bit. I walked really funny, man. I looked like I don't know how it looked from the outside, but anyway,
Yeah.
the week after I went to the gym, I did a deload just because, but still okay, in the overhead press, I feel good. Let's keep going. In the bench press, I feel good. Let's keep going.
Mm.
Let's try squats. Okay, I feel surprisingly good on the squats. Let's try deadlifts.
Beautiful.
It's been really differently, man. But yeah, I've been there. I've seen friends, I've seen clients go there in the sense of being, let's say, catastrophic about it. I understand. I try to be empathic because I know the language, the way we frame. Even if I'm not in charge of their training, the way we talk about injuries, about pain, I know I can fuck them up beyond where they already are. So that's one thing that I wanted to connect with this side, this part of the conversation.
Yeah.
Where is currently the biopsychosocial model standing? Because I know, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's not actually new. I think it's 70s, something like that. But for some people, myself included, when I first heard of this, I was like, boom, mind blown.
Yes.
How's this possible? Why are people not talking? Am I hearing this right?
Yeah.
Are my emotions, it's a super novelty, but how is this standing in 2025,
Yeah. You're right. It's not new, and there are other models to explain pain. And when it comes to models of explaining anything, I'm forgetting who said this quote, and I should remember, but somebody wise had said, "All models are wrong. Some are just useful." Which summarizes the point that models are a way for us to conceptualize and explain a thing, an effect, a phenomenon, and it's going to be limited. It's not going to be perfect, but it's useful for us in the moment for some reason or another. So the biopsychosocial model, yeah, I believe originated in the 70s. So there are other models like there's been a more recent proposal in 2020 or 2021 of like the 5E model, just another way of trying to capture this phenomenon of pain. But how does it hold up right now on the ground in terms of application, whether in a clinical sense, if you're a coach or a clinician, or you're the one who's navigating pain or injury? I think it still holds up pretty well because it acknowledges the fact that there are these physical components to pain and what we're experiencing, for sure. There's also the psychological components and the social components. Some people wonder about the social components. What are we talking about? It's the responses of ourselves and people around us to pain. If you see me get hurt on deadlifts, you're like, oh, bro, I can't believe that happened. Oh, man, I hurt my back and I fucked me up for years. Like, that's an input of the social environment, right? It matters. It's not something that usually comes to mind, but it has an impact. So to answer your question, I think it's still useful. It's helpful to, you know, if you're in the world of research or clinical work, it's helpful to try to stay up on some of the newer explanations and take what's useful. But at the end of the day, if you're working with clients or you're applying it to yourself, it doesn't serve you to get caught up in the weeds. We have to have things that are useful and understandable and that ultimately guide behavior, which we'll get to in terms of like, you're here, what do you do? And I think your example is actually really excellent of a key thing, which is as best as possible, trying not to catastrophize too much, which is the, oh my gosh, my world's ending. It can feel like that. That would be valid if it does. And still, we need to try to move to this place where we're essentially testing things. When I'm working with a client, they're like, hey, my shoulder hurt after bench yesterday. I don't know how it's going to be today or how I'm going to be able to finish the next couple workouts. I'm saying, okay, cool. I really appreciate you telling me this. This is good that you noticed it. What we need to do now is test a few things with no expectations that we're going to get it right, with some expectations that we could have some more pain, and that's okay. We'll manage it. And then if we have that mindset, then we're able to, whether it's in the gym or at home, actually go and try some stuff, just like you did. Like, oh, let me just warm up and see what happens. Not committing to like doing everything, but rather committing in the moment to making the next most appropriate decision, which if it feels okay, let's try the next warm-up set. That feels okay, let's try the set after that. If it doesn't feel okay, all right, here's where we can start to play with some things. The levers we can play with are like range of motion. If that shoulder's hurting the most when you're down at the bottom on your chest, what if we try a spoto press? What if we try a pin press? That limits the range of motion. Does that feel any better? If yes, great, you got something that you can work with. If no, okay. What if we try changing the speed? What if we slow it down? It's going to mean that we don't need as much weight to make it challenging because every rep now takes longer and you have more time under tension. But sometimes, especially with tendons and things like that, it's a little more tolerable and it lets you keep position a little bit more easily, which can be helpful. If that's still not cutting it and it's still painful for you, okay, we can play with grip. What if we go wider? What if we go narrower? If you want to get really crazy, what if we go reverse grip on the bench press? What if we try dumbbells? What if we try a machine? How do cables work? And like, it's not the case where I'm throwing out all of these options to somebody all at once, but just to illustrate even just still a portion of all of the options that we have in front of us to find something that is manageable, maybe not totally pain free. If you can get it pain free, amazing, but it doesn't always work like that. But manageable still keeps you training, which not only has the physical benefit of signaling to the cellular pathways, hey, look, we need to still make sure that we accomplish these tasks. We're still using these tissues this particular way, but also psychologically, you still feel like a lifter. You don't have to worry about, is this as much? Is this wrong for me to be here? The answer becomes yes, it is okay for you to be here. And moreover, we can find ways for you to still train, for you to still get the stress outlet that this is for you to still be around your buddies because this is your social time too, or this is the only time you have for yourself because you're a busy working mom. Like we can still keep that in place, which ends up being really important for holistic health and ultimately performance. Thoughts on that?
Oh, a lot, man. I love this conversation. I love these topics. And that very quote that you just cited, the all models are wrong, I think. George something, I think it's George
Yeah.
Box. I love it, man, because it blew my mind when I first heard of it and actually understood it that, well, this model tries to explain reality, but it falls short because it's really complex to explain reality
Yeah.
based on whatever you're trying to explain, and pain being so complex in the sense, well, maybe just context, because we assume oftentimes
Mhm.
that pain is inherently bad. But well,
Mhm.
then you have people that actually look for pain in their relationships and whatever, you kind of get
Yeah.
freaky, right? But it's funny it's funny that you can use pain for pleasure. And
Mhm.
there's a song by, I think it's Sum 41, Pain for Pleasure.
That's right.
Um, that's really funny, man. And knowing this can actually, and I think also using your sense of humor, at least for me, it really helps because it gets you out of this vicious circle of catastrophizing pain,
Mhm.
feeling that you're done as a lifter, as an athlete, and that can feel terrifying, even if you're not an athlete, if you're not planning to compete, but you started to feel better with your training and whatever, and then you get hurt, and it's the end of the world. It can, like you said, can feel like that. But I'm really curious because I'm aware of several studies that actually look into the use of language by
Mhm.
professionals that can really alter the way people feel and experience their painful experience. How do you do it, man? How if an athlete comes to you, their self got an injury or whatever,
Mhm.
how can you break the cycle of this train of thought that it's negative that leads to nowhere without,
Mhm.
because that's a trap that I found myself with these things that either you go completely to the extreme to the biomedical model, or you go to the extreme and say, oh, pain is all in your head. How are you aware of these things as you speak to an athlete or as someone that's just interested in training, not necessarily an athlete?
Yeah.
Because it's really complex, man.
Very complex. And I've swung both ways where, oh, you've got pain because your big toe is deviated 3 degrees medially. Fuck off. And then also, I've gone the other way. This is during that nihilistic, like existential crisis as a new grad, where I was learning about all these things, and people would come in to see me in the clinic when I still worked in the clinic, and I'd get my piece of paper and I'd explain, like, yeah, we've got this cognitive experience of pain. So you're thinking about this, and like people would leave and never come back because they didn't feel heard either way or assured. So I'm going to start my answer here by saying I don't have it all figured out. I'm far from perfect, and I keep trying to be better, and I keep learning, um, daily from my interactions and conversations and from other people. I would say though that what I found are a few important things. The first is I listen more than I talk to start, and asking asking questions. I ask a lot of questions, but I also give space for people to answer because, in alignment with what you said, the literature around how language can really impact the relationship and the outcomes of clinical interactions, same sort of thing. We've got, I think, a well cited study looking at physicians was saying the average time until a physician interrupted a patient was 11 seconds. I mean, I don't know about you. I can talk kind of fast when I get really wound up, but I can't say everything I want to say in 11 seconds. So, being able to sit down in whatever setting, in person, digital, I work with people remotely exclusively these days, and have them tell me what's going on in their words, focusing in on the things that they're most concerned about. If it's their shoulder, if it's their knee, their back. All right, cool. Tell me the story. What's going on with the shoulder? And I'll ask a lot of questions and I do my best to not pass judgment because in just the world of communication, not even like clinical or coaching work, I really like the idea that to influence somebody for the better, you have to first step into their world and appreciate it without accepting all of the narratives that they may be telling themselves that especially may not be accurate. To give them a different perspective, you have to first have the trust and be in their world and see what they're seeing first as best you can. So I try to bring that to these interactions where they tell me their story. I'm asking clarifying questions and I want to know, how's that been affecting you? How's that been showing up for you? What do you think is going on here? And sometimes, a lot of times, they have a good idea. I think it's because of this, or I heard somebody say this and that fits me. Every now and then, someone's like, I don't know, that's why I'm here. You tell me, bro. And I'm like, all right, cool. That's fair. I just want to ask anyway. And then I also like to ask questions like, what do you think we need to do to fix this? And I use the word fix intentionally there because there's a conversation to be had around if you're a physio, if you're a doctor, if you're a chiropractor, any sort of health professional, are you a fixer? And I don't like to look at it as a fixer in general, but in that question, I like to use that word so that people can tell me what their impression of the solution is. It's an evocative word that way. And then they'll tell me whatever ideas if they have them. And then I also like to really get clear on what success really looks like for them. I'm like, cool, Daniel, look, man, if I go all Harry Potter on us and I wave my magic wand and your life is as close to perfect as we can fucking get, what does that look like? What are you doing? How do you feel? And you paint me that picture. People are like, you mean in the gym or in life? And I'm like, anything and everything, man. I want to know what comes up for you. Because people don't just live in the gym, they're whole people. So once I got that idea, then if I'm in a session with them, this is more the case when I was in the clinic or if I do consults, I'll also ask them like, what do we need to do today by the time that we're finished here in 45 minutes or whenever it is for you to feel like we had a really good first session? And whatever their answer is doesn't necessarily mean I'm just going to do that, but it at least gives me an idea of where the goalposts are. And through this conversation, that usually gives me an idea of if they have these beliefs about pain, if they have a certain attitude, certain emotional state around these things, which I'm not necessarily trying to change all at once, because I don't think you can. But I'm at least trying to take stock of what are the biggest dominoes for me to start chipping away at here. What are the most important conversations to start? Because it's probably not the case that we're doing the crash course on pain and people's brains are changed and they're feeling better and they're skipping out of the room. It's a process, but I want to set us up for success and set the expectations and also know what their expectations are of me. I don't know if that's the answer you thought I was going to give you, but that's what I got for you.
Ah, that's perfect, man. But I think it segues into the role of diagnosis
Mhm.
because some people come with a supposed diagnosis. I mean, things that you hear all the time, like, I don't know, bone on bone, you have the
Mhm.
knees of a something year old, wear and tear, all these things associated with language that can be really problematic, not because actually you have bone on bone, because we imagine that we have these things and we need let's say surgery, we can function as regular human beings. But do you go into the role of Mythbuster, or maybe just hear people out and maybe calm their fears first? How do you go about these things?
Yeah, it varies from situation to situation, and I'd say it depends the most on how attached they are to those diagnostics or diagnoses, and how much of an impact I think that's going to make on what I need to do with them then and there. Excuse me. To use some examples, I've had plenty of people who have come in who have had x-rays and MRIs of their back, and they're like, I've got back pain. The MRI found herniated discs, and like that's why I've got pain. Like, I don't know what you can do to fix my herniated disc. And so that gives me an impression that okay, they're putting a lot of stock in the MRI. I know, and we can know from the research that there can be correlations, certainly, between MRI and other imaging findings and people's pain experiences. However, there's plenty of evidence to show that there's asymptomatic occurrences of those same things. I made a post, I think it was last week, that summarized a few studies, one of which found that 20 to 30% of people between 20 and 29 years old have completely asymptomatic findings of degenerative disc disease, disc herniations or protrusions, and that percentage of asymptomatic findings increased as the age went up. So that if you were, I think it was between 80 and 89 years old or over 80 years old, you had a 90+% likelihood of finding something, degenerative disc, protrusion, herniation, on your MRI without pain though. So these are the things that we keep in mind, knowing that how things look on an MRI or X-ray aren't the whole story. Can they factor in? Certainly. I have another client I'm working with right now. He had really debilitating low back pain. He's a personal trainer, so he has to be able to train his clients as well as train himself, and he wasn't able to do that. He had imaging, and his image made sense because he had a disc protrusion at a certain level that affected one side more than the other and was pushing on a nerve root. Now, we started to work together before that, and even as we got that MRI finding, it didn't change a lick of what we were doing in terms of his training and his rehab, because the thing that stayed the same was I'm in pain. I need to be able to train my clients. I want to train this way myself, and this is what I can currently tolerate. Now we got to start moving or getting his body used to those things again. So cool. We figured out roughly what his green light zone was, the things that he could tolerate fine. The red light, which was like the no-go things that he couldn't do, deadlifts, squats, extension-based things. And the yellow, which were things that we'd have to use caution with and like ease our way into it. So we started with a lot of green stuff and pulled in a couple of the yellow zone stuff just to get his body used to that. And as he was able to tolerate that, we pulled in more stuff from the yellow. And as more of the yellow became the green, some of the red zone stuff could become the yellow. And like that process didn't change because of the MRI. We saw the MRI. I was like, yep, okay, that makes sense. My opinion and the plan stays exactly the same. Does that make sense to you? And he was like, yeah. So we just kept on going. He's crushing it now. He's back to deadlifts and hinges and squats, and we've still got a ways to go, but so much better. So bringing it back around to how do I handle diagnoses, diagnostics, depending on what they already have. Honestly, I asked them, hey, cool, I know you got this diagnosis from your doctor or from the previous physio. I can understand, the impact they may have had. Are you open to a conversation around it? And what I think might actually be helpful for us to think about here and now. If they are open to it, great. We start that conversation and we continue it on. If they're not open to it, I mean, I'm still trying to help them as best I can. Every now and then you run into somebody who's not actually ready to be helped, but I would say they're in the small minority. Most of the time, people just need reassurance. They need to be heard. They need to know that you know what their goals are, and they just need a plan. And things go okay that way.
Yeah, that's awesome. I actually have a couple studies about the MRIs and stuff like that.
Mhm.
I just want to throw some numbers because I think they're fascinating. There's one that showed 93% of asymptomatic individuals that had actually this degeneration. So people didn't notice. And that reminds me, the grandfather of my best friend,
Mhm.
someday started feeling a little bit of pain in his thorax, a little bit of the man felt a little bit uncomfortable. Let's just put it that way. He didn't give it much importance.
Yeah.
A couple of days later, the pain persisted. Okay, let's go to the doctor. Oh, surprise, surprise! You have a fracture in your ribs, and it's like the man was fractured, and he didn't even give a fuck, man. It's I'm not saying that we should be as stoic as he was, but I'm
Sure.
saying that perhaps the way we experience pain, like you mentioned, and we already mentioned before, the way we frame these things and the way we talk about these things can really make the difference. And that I love the green light, yellow light, and red light because it keeps the people accountable. They can train, they
Mhm.
can get stronger, and actually, when time is right, they can actually go to the red light and start to bring it to the yellow, to the green. I love that, man, because that's something I didn't understand back in the day in my first trips to Snap City. I thought that reds were gonna stay red forever, and that was quite depressing. I was anxious about it. I didn't have anyone to talk about these things because the doctor, well, don't train. My family, well, they're not really in the field or know about these things. It's totally okay, but it's a little bit frustrating. Some professors that I had back in the day, well, neither. So you kind of go along in that journey. And that's why I think these conversations and to make it public and to reach as many people as possible, it's really helpful because in spite of, let's say, the biopsychosocial model being quite old,
Mhm.
it's still a novelty for a lot of people. So
Yeah.
taking from what you mentioned, I wanted to also put ourselves into the shoes of people that are injured or are feeling pain.
Mhm.
That's the case of the physician, right? That you get the MRI or something, but some other people can tell you that it's because of your posture,
Yeah.
it's because of your imbalances. How do you go about these other narratives that are really persistent, for instance, in social media, especially the posture one? I've seen it a lot, and also the imbalances. It's because your left eyelid is a little bit close, and you know that's why your squat sucks. So,
I mean, I laugh, but it's really not that far off from that, unfortunately. Um, I start with, again, getting that picture as full of a picture as I can of what's going on, how long's it going on, what do you think about it, what have you been told about this, and then one second, excuse me. Especially as those narratives come up around, yeah, I've been told my posture is crap, or it's the imbalances. Then I'll if I haven't already, I'll ask them, okay, cool. What else have you been told? What have you been told, and what do you think about what you've been told? And sometimes people are like, I think it's bullshit. I'd be like, okay, cool. I agree, and I can tell you why. Are you open to more of a conversation around it? Other times they say, hey, I think it makes a lot of sense that my shoulder pain is because I'm hunched over and my posture is all terrible. And I try to, I mean, the principle that I live by is I never want to say anything that's untrue. And sometimes or sorry, in addition to not saying anything that's untrue, you also pick your battles. So having this conversation about, well, actually, you've been fed a load of horseshit because posture is not this neat and tidy thing that is one thing that if you deviate, your body's going to explode. Um, Instead, it's something that I'm probably earmarking and deciding, okay, I might come back to that later, or I'll try to not sidestep it, but get at the most important things and try to avoid something that feels like a confrontation or anything combative, because ultimately that's not going to be productive for the patient or for me. Um, so in those instances where they tell me like, yeah, I think my posture is awful, I'm like, okay, I hear you. Cool. We'll address that and we'll figure out what we need to do to get your shoulder feeling better. Bringing it back around to the thing that they do care about. And I'll say this, man, placebo is a hell of a drug. So that's a difference between me now and me fresh out of grad school. Um, I'm okay. If people think that I need to do some postural work because that's going to fix my shoulder, I don't really have an argument against that. Like, if you want to do postural work, cool. I can show you some drills. We can see if they make you feel better. And if they're sustainable and you want to do them, A-OK by me. As long as we're also doing the other things that are really necessary to create and maintain change. Actually, side note, which is relevant, when it comes to the research on pain, we all, I think you and I and people in this world are going to have our biases. Like, we want to get people lifting. Exercise is going to be probably the best, most evidence-based modality. It ends up being the case that in many of the studies, exercise does not outperform many other modalities, be it manual therapy, pain neuroscience education, maybe electrical modalities, sometimes acupuncture. And my point in saying that is that with pain, we have lots of ways that we can, according to the research, affect pain, hopefully for the better. And it's actually a fallacy for us to believe that in all cases, exercise is the best. I do believe that exercise comes with more upsides than most other modalities, be that as a bias, but also like if we get people exercising, lifting, moving, we get the benefit of physical activity closer to maybe the physical activity guidelines. We get the ability to condition themselves and build up the capacity to do the things that they want to do in the gym and in life. I think that's awesome. I absolutely bias towards that. But it's also important to recognize that in this circumstance, many roads can lead to Rome. And if we're willing to accept that, it means that we just have more options potentially to advise people on and more permission to give people to move and to try things. And my personal belief is that if we can break down fear and apprehension as much as possible around pain, and we empower people to do things and to know that they can keep doing things for themselves that will probably keep helping them, the greater of a chance we have of getting them to actually feel better. It's not an illusion. I mean, we've got regression to the mean, we've got natural history, which are going to occur anyway. And it is important, I think, to, if people are trusting you with their time and their money, to guide them as best as possible. But I think sometimes, and I've been guilty of this, we can be so staunchly, no, it only has to be exercise. There's no manual therapy. There's no any of these things. And all I'm doing today is saying, based on the research around pain, it's not that clear cut. We want to guide people as best we can. I definitely have a bias towards exercise, but there are multiple options that do help people feel better. So that was a lot.
Yeah, for real. I think there are some things that could be categorized as new age, some the stuff I'm talking about, the Alexander technique. I don't know. There's a lot of stuff out there, man. But hey, if that, for instance, is the 1 hour that this person has to relax to not have their husband yelling or their kids yelling or whatever, it could actually be of benefit. So yeah, I'm with you on that one. I tend to go always, man, try to be this myth buster with people that, oh no, it's because science shows, it can be helpful in some sense, but it can be also unhelpful, in the placebo, in the nocebo side of things. That, okay, if it's worth it for you, if it's non-harmful, of course, more power to you. And I have to tell you, man, in regards to the posture thing, when I was a student, well, I was dead as broke. uh, and I thought that I had flat feet, because I saw my squatting and the way I walk, and I got super stressed out and went, "Oh my God, what now?" And
Yeah.
so nobody told me, but I was sure that I have flat foot, so I went and bought some
Yep.
insoles that I wore that I wore all the time. They were kind of stinky, but because I wear them all the time and also in the gym, because I was afraid that my apparently flat feet gonna give me trouble, and then my knees, and then my back, and then everything's gonna explode, and my spine is gonna. I've been there, and the way that exercise, empowerment, non-fear, non-anxiety, how the way you frame it in the mindset side of things, I think it's for me at least the first step that I actually wanted to talk to you. I have it here in my notes.
Mm-hmm.
What would be your advice for people about mindset about pain, about injury, how to calm yourself, what stories to tell yourself,
Mm.
and also being in the hands of a professional, of course, but in the psychological side of things, how can we advise people that chill, it's gonna be okay? Let's frame it this way.
Yeah, it's a great question. And the first piece I would say is without dismissing the normal fear feelings, and it can be a lot of feelings that come up when you are in pain or you see something that you think could lead to pain or problems. You start to get anxious and wound up and all of the things. The first piece is just affirming that, okay, cool, valid feelings. Let's just not panic as much as possible. I'll add the caveat. If somebody listening here, whether now or in the future, you're experiencing pain, really, sorry, pain that's unmanageable, really weird symptoms, you see something that's freaking you out, by all means, go get checked out by a physical therapist, by a physician. Like, just go see somebody who's professional to at least make sure that the really nasty things are ruled out. So you always have permission. You always have at least my personal encouragement. If you're worried about those things, you can go get checked out. If you're in a place where you're feeling pain, feeling symptoms, and it's manageable at least, okay, cool. Take some breaths. It can sound, again, kind of hokey and new agey, but breathing ends up being a really powerful tool, especially to help down-regulate our sympathetic response, which is naturally upregulated when we're in pain or afraid of something because of the fight, flight, or freeze response. And we can start to tap into parasympathetic, which we need for recovery and all the things anyway. So, like, taking some deep breaths, starting to ramp down a little bit, at minimum, helps to make the decision-making process clearer, where you get to assess what really happened, what do I think is happening, or where am I right now? How do I feel about this? And then what comes next? And what comes next may be going to see somebody or connecting with somebody online, especially with the power of the internet that we have today. And I would encourage you to consider that. You know, sometimes what people need is one moment or one interaction to feel heard, understood, and then get the input from a professional. You know what, you're going to be okay. I believe you need to do are this, and this. If things get worse, here's what we'll do. But oftentimes things get better, and that's all people need. Other times it ends up being this longer process because sometimes it just does. It takes longer. Having guidance in some way, shape, or form is really helpful. There's tons of incredible information out there in the rehab world, organizations like Clinical Athlete, Barbell Medicine, Barbell Rehab. I'm affiliated with Clinical Athlete, so full disclosure there. But they all put out incredible resources, some free, some paid, that if you're a coach, clinician, or the person going through it, there's gems in it for you. Same on YouTube. Tons of really reputable people, experts in the field. You can go and check them out. It also doesn't hurt to have a conversation with any of those people. If you are, you know, a bodybuilder and you've got some pain and you want to make sure you're good to train, cool. Organizations like 3DMJ and my friend, Dr. Nicholas Liccamelli, who works for them, he's their specialist with that. So having a conversation can lead to at least more confidence in what your individual path needs to be. And I stress individual because naturally, when you've fucked yourself up a bit, you're searching Google, you're going through Instagram, you're saying, all right, what are the special exercises I got to do to fix this? And everybody has the 3 exercises you have to do with shoulder pain, or the 3 exercises you must never do with shoulder pain. And it's just throwing shit at the wall to see what sticks. Good luck is what I say if you choose to go down that route. It's much, much better. Yes, there's, you know, perhaps some time or even financial investment if it's accessible to you to work with somebody. Understandable if you have limitations or it's not accessible, in which case the free resources are great. But if you can work with somebody, who has the experience and can say, Daniel, for you in this specific circumstance, I think this, and I think our most valuable things are going to be this, this, and this. We don't got to worry about those other things. The time and the worry that it saves is, oh my gosh, if I could go back and do that and not make the stupid mistakes like I used to and try to self rehab for 2 years and get fucking nowhere, I would do that. So that's what I would say.
I'm laughing because been there, done that, man. I was that guy that was doing every possible exercise that needed to be done to rehab and whatever, and I avoided exercises that people told me in the interwebs that I should
Yep.
avoid. And actually, a little confession, I even got to the point of sending a message to my main squad youth. I never got a response, man,
Damn
because I was so
you, Aaron.
frustrated.
You didn't respond? Son of a bitch.
Yeah, man, I'm sure why, because he has tons of
Yeah, yeah,
followers. But I
yeah.
was so desperate for an answer that I don't know what to do. Everything hurts. I'm frustrated. I'm sad. I'm anxious. I'm fearful. But I want to train because I want to develop my physique, hopefully compete, and it starts this war in your head on top of anxiety, on top of whatever else.
Mhm.
Yeah, I've been there, man. I've been there. And I think that's why this topic specifically, it's so close to my heart, so endearing to me, and so fascinating because at first glance, it can be really intimidating that, well, maybe like you mentioned at the beginning of the conversation, we really don't understand pain 100%.
Mhm.
I don't know what percentage you would put it, but it's not my area of expertise. But
Yep.
the uncertainty that it gives you, it can be daunting, but also can be liberating. That perhaps these people that claim to have the answers really don't,
Mhm.
and you have several opinions. You need education, and I think for me, education at least it's a vital part of liberation in the philosophical and in the physiological sense. So, I mean, this type of conversation and actually talking to you that have not only the education, but the experience in dealing with these things with athletes, with yourself, the resiliency that you have to have with your own process. That's what continues to blow my mind, man, I have to say. And I get a lot from your content. Just certain phrases like "you are not broken." Believe me, man, I say again, it can go a long way
Mm.
in the role of empowering people. So I just wanted to know them.
Thank you, man. I really appreciate it. It truly means a lot to hear that from you, especially somebody with your background. And I get a lot from these conversations too. Excuse me. Because, I mean, shoot, it's personally, I get a lot out of it because it always helps to refine my skill or how I approach these conversations when it's more us talking shop and looking kind of big picture, but also taking these gems for whether it's a post or the next client interaction that I need to be on the game for. And I agree, man. Societally, I think we have a long way to go in terms of dispelling the old the old myths, the misinformation, and if we're being charitable, whether it's professionals or people in our lives, our friends, our family, people are working with what they have. They're working with what they've been taught, and in many instances, it's not correct or it's not the full picture. But there's so much stigma societally, and still the misinformation, and it really gets me heated under the hood when it comes from professionals who should know better. If we're being charitable, cool. Everyone makes mistakes. I absolutely do. I fuck up more often than I care to admit. Um, but there's a special responsibility that I think you have if you're going to be any sort of healthcare professional or coach, working with anybody, regardless of how large your platform is. But if it's larger, I think even more of a responsibility to at least do the best that you can and put forth accurate information or try your best. Say I don't know if you don't know. Try to keep up with the things that are relevant in your field and point to other people and resources who are doing that sort of work, because there are real stakes. Like people's time and quality of life, like you shared. I mean, I've got my own stories that we didn't get into in depth here, but hamstring, back, all sorts of injuries that cost time and have a real toll that they can take. if managed improperly or paired with poor information. And again, philosophically, time is the one resource we can't create any more of. You can get more money, you can hopefully find more food and water and shelter, but you cannot make more time. So the things that steal time from people unnecessarily, that's what I really rail against. And I'm grateful for these conversations. I'm grateful for you having me back on and we get to talk about this. And I hope somebody listening to this, gets some benefit from it. And maybe if you're going through an injury now or you go through one in the future, it helps to take the edge off and it makes it easier for you to still navigate that. Because if you can learn to navigate injury and pain, you will win, not only in training, but also in life, because these things are inevitabilities.
You'll become a certified badass. And just as a final note, in regards to time, that's actually, man, why I'm so grateful for people like you that actually take the time to reply from a random guy like myself. The first time now we know each other a little bit more. But to actually give me 1 hour of your time, I value it a lot, man, more than I can express through words, because I know that's something that doesn't come back, and hopefully that's also my wish that somebody can actually listen to these conversations, whether it's live or afterwards in YouTube, and get something of value, because that's the whole point. I usually talk a lot of shit about social media, but hey, man, being real, it allows me to connect with people like yourself to hopefully put out something out in the world, in the wild, for people to get a little bit help, not to solve their problems, but to actually just a word of advice, just a word of you're gonna be
Yeah.
okay. So, my man Jared, I just wanted to talk you to thank you again. Thanks for your time, sir. Thanks for your valuable insights. And man, I don't say it enough, but anytime you want to come to Mexico, you're more than welcome. I can give you a taco tour if you wish.
Oh my gosh, say less, bro. I'm there. I would
Of course,
love
my
that.
man. So I
Thank you
want to
for,
take. No, go
yeah,
ahead, please.
thank you again for having me on here, and thank you for the invite. I mean, shoot, I've been to Mexico once for my honeymoon, so it just probably means that I got to make it a point to come down, and we'll train, get some tacos. It'll be great.
Oh man, that would be awesome to train with you to get some post-workout tacos and creatine, as according to Dr. Scott Forbes, that I got to meet in person, and he was fascinated with tacos and creatine. So that'll be my pleasure, man.
I love it. Thanks, Daniel. I really appreciate this. Anytime you want to do this again, let me know. We'll make it happen.
Thanks to you, my man Jared. Hope you have a great rest of the day. Talk to you soon.